Okay, I'm so excited that we're getting into our clay. I know you are too. And we're gonna make a really sweet froggy pinch pot. It's called a pinch pot because you use your fingers to pinch the entire head area into something that would look like a pot. And the entire frog is hand built. That means that everything is rolled and cut and made completely from our hands. So let's begin. You're gonna get a ball of clay that is about the size of a fist, maybe a little bit bigger. And you're gonna start just working the clay in your hands by pushing that ball of clay together and rolling it just like many of you would with Play-Doh. And you wanna try to work quickly because the moisture, the wetness in the clay gets pulled out by our hands. And when that happens, if we don't work quickly on this, then the clay can become over time dry and crumbly. You can pat it, you can roll it, you can use your thumbs to smooth or your fingers to smooth some of these lines just a bit by pushing. You can always start over if you need to. You can even roll it right on the table if you want to do that, like this with a flat hand. Okay, so you want to get fairly round and somewhat smooth. It doesn't have to be perfect just yet. And then to do the pinch pot, I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to push, and then I might turn to a finger. Push right in the middle and make a hole. It almost is going to look like a donut. And as I do that, I'm going to stick my finger in, and this finger over here is almost going to push while this one pulls up. So I'm kind of going like this inside of my pot. I'm reaching way down in there and making that hole bigger by pushing. If it gets even bigger, you can start using 2 fingers. Don't worry too much about what the shape is doing over here because we can smooth that out. But you want to get in pretty deep and try to go all the way around evenly if you can, meaning that all this thickness is about the same, and reach way back into the mouth until you have a nice size pinch pot that you're pretty happy with. Okay, then instead of keeping it round, we're going to want to maybe tap it on the table like this a bit, just so that when it comes out of the kiln, that flatness will let it sit on a shelf. And I'm ready to kind of get this looking a little bit more like a frog head. My clay is cracking a little bit. That can be fixed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of flatten it out a tad, but one hand always wants to try to support the clay. Take some water from your slip cup, just a little bit, and I can rub it on the cracks. You don't want it to be soaked, then it will just be hard to pick up. It'll be a total mess. But that little bit of water can help with the cracks. And I'm just looking at my edges, and I'm looking at the top, and I'm trying to get the shape close to what I want it to look like. Doesn't have to be perfect. Things can always be changed a little bit. It's the beauty of the clay. But I want to get it pretty close to what looks like a nice big open mouth. If I want to go back and pinch a little bit more, make this a little larger by doing that, I can. It's flexible. Just don't get too thin. Right now I've got about this much width for my clay. Smooth out my little cracks, at least a little bit with my thumbs and my fingers, pushing gently. And then I'm ready to set down the body like that, okay? The next part will be to make the eyes, and to make the eyes, you're going to want 2 small pinches of clay, about the size of, what's that the size of? A marble, that's a good idea. Roll it in your hands to get a ball going, and set that aside while you make a second one. Take another pinch of clay, roll it in your hands, and then compare them. Notice that this one's way bigger than that one is, and I can pinch off a little bit, get rid of that, and just re-roll and try to get them close to the same size if possible. It's a little bit closer, and instead of making this one smaller, I think I want to make my other one just a little bit bigger so that these eyes are visible. In other words, you can see them well, but I don't want them so enormous that it looks silly. So I'm comparing my two size eyes. They're fairly smooth, they're fairly round, and now I'm ready to attach them. When you attach them, if you can see on this one, you're going to want to put them toward the back of the head so that we have room for nostrils and we get a little bit more of a face shape going. So take your pinch pot, and toward the back here, you need to score. Scoring is used whenever you want to attach pieces of clay, and you want to take a pin tool and make some nice deep marks like that, okay? I also need to score the piece that I want to attach. So I'm going to hold that in my fingers, and I'm going to make some score marks, okay? Make sure you have a couple of them, and put it on both eyes and on the place where both eyes belong. Then we need our slip, and if you remember, slip is clay that has a bunch of water in it and it's become kind of gooey, and slip is clay glue. It's so important that anytime you attach something, you score it and slip it. If you don't, it'll fall apart in the kiln, even though it looks like it's holding on right now. Notice that I just put a little lump of the slip on both spots, but I didn't rub it. If I were to rub it, then what I'd really be doing is erasing the score marks that I just put, and I don't want that to happen. Take these score marks and face them onto those. Stick your fingers in the mouth and use your thumb to just give this a little bit of a push. Don't worry about any of that goop yet, it can be fixed later. But you want to push it gently to make sure it's attached well. Take your other eye. There's already slip on there. I'm gonna hold this where I can get my fingers in to support him. Take the score marks, press the eye on gently. If you press too hard, you're gonna smush it, okay? And once they're on, I could take my pinky finger and get some of that off if I need to or I want to. Can always go back to it. I can even take a little bit of water from my slip cup, and sometimes that helps smooth the edges. But remember, just a teeny tiny amount. Too much water is gonna make a slippery mess, and it's really gonna be hard to deal with that. Okay, so I've softened it a little bit. I'm actually not worried about any kind of perfect just yet. Okay, see them like that? The next thing I wanna do to finish the eyes is I want to take a marker cap, and I'm gonna support this. Always support it when you push, otherwise the thing will smush. So I need to hold it just gently, take the marker cap. Actually, my fingers are behind the eye to support it, and push. And then I'm gonna take the marker cap on the second eye, push, and push a little bit deeply so that there's actually an indentation or a crevice or a groove. All those words mean the same thing, so that the eye is visible. And then we want to make a pupil. So you can use either the bottom of a pen tool, or I've got this wood tool here you could ask for. I'm going to use the wood tool. I'm going to support the eye, take the wood tool, decide where I want that little highlight to be, and push in kind of hard. And then on this side, I'm going to do the same. And then go ahead and check that out. This one here has some little eyelashes that I simply took the tool. Support everything with your hands when you're gonna do this. Oops, my lights go off when they're on a timer, so I've gotta move. Take the tip, and I just kind of gently drag and drew some eyelashes on the frog. It's gotta be on the eyeball if you wanna do that. You can't build teeny little skinny eyelashes on, because believe it or not, they will crack and break. So if you want eyelashes, you can, or you might not want eyelashes like this one. Take the tip of either your wood stick or the pen tool. They both have a similar tip. And you can create some little nostrils, either holes or kind of an oval shape. But by putting those on the nose, it sort of helps this to look even more like a frog. If you don't like something, you can just smooth it right over and do it again. Clay is always fixable. Okay? So take your cute little pinch pot frog and kind of lay him or her down. And when you sit him down, see if he needs a little you know, flattening to make sure that he will sit on your shelf when you take him home, okay, that it's a little bit flat. Now we're ready for the tongue. So cute. You're gonna need a small pinch of clay, and you're gonna start by rolling this into what looks like a log or a finger shape or something like that. If you have any cracks, take just a tiny bit of water. I even wipe my fingers off sometimes to try to smooth that. Okay, this is about the size of my finger. That's a pretty good size because we want this to go in the mouth and curl up. So, see where you're at. When you're ready, maybe better to do it on your canvas bag so it doesn't stick to the table. Take a finger or two and flatten this just a little bit. I'm just pushing a little bit so that it's not round and it's flat. I don't want it too thin because that can be breakable. Okay, I can start to curl the tongue if I want by pinching, flattening, and it needs to stay pretty big because again, it needs to fit from the mouth up to the face. When you're ready, and that doesn't really need a whole lot of excess work, you know, you just roll it, flatten it, and then if you want to pinch the tip a little bit. In the mouth, you're going to put the frog on your hand, and right in here we need to score, because remember that scoring is the way that we attach something securely with clay. So I'm going to make those little grooves. I hope you can see it okay. I can't really see what the camera is doing. Lay the frog down. And this is the part that's going to attach. So I need to score that part of the tongue. Lay it down. Take some good slip. See how much I have on my finger? It's not just wet, it's not empty. You need this for the clay glue, the slip. Put that in the mouth, right on top of your scoring, but don't rub at it. If you do that, you're erasing all the scoring marks, so it's just sitting there like that. Then I take my tongue and I take this part of the scoring that I did on the tongue and make sure that that faces, see how I'm flipping that down, where I scored in the mouth. And then I'm gonna take my thumb in here and I'm gonna push that tongue on a little bit. And it's okay if it flattens out, then it'll just be attached good. Use my thumb or my fingers to smooth just the part that's attached to the mouth. I'm not doing anything with this right now, okay? And then finally, unless this is laying on the ground like that is, which might work, see me say might work, we probably want to curl this up and attach it just on the edge here. And the reason is it'll be less breakable. When you curl it, bend it up very gently. You might need that teeny bit of water to smooth cracks. It's normal if that happens. And then you've got to find a place over on the corner of the face to attach it. So take your pin tool, we're ready to score. Remember that scoring marks should be sort of deep. And then I also need to score the tip of the tongue. And it's hard because this is small, but it's not impossible to make a couple marks on there. What happens with the scoring is this slip gets into those grooves. It gets down in there because it's wet and it fuses, in other words, forces it to stay together. So I take a little slip. It might be easier to put the slip on the face than the tongue, like that. Take the part that I scored and make it touch. Now I want to push really gently, but I don't want to push so hard that I start smushing the tongue, and that's a little bit tricky. So my fingers are working so softly and gently in there. You can do it. Okay, it's attached. I'm just checking it out. I see a crack there, and I'm kind of rubbing that with my finger. Look on the bottom of the tongue. Mine needs a little bit of smoothing, just a little bit with water. Okay. Before we get too much farther, it would be a good point to put our name on the bottom here, because we certainly don't want your frog claimed by anybody else. So hold him in your hand. He's such an easy little guy to hold. Flip it over. Use your pin tool to put your name. So I'm going to put Miss White. You don't need to dig the name in really hard because it actually will make this scratchy when we glaze it and put it on you know, your counter or something at home. But you want to carve your name in, and please, please, please put your class code. Miss White doesn't have a class code, but if it's Mrs. Ashley 2, you need a 2A. If it's Mrs. Osborne, 2O, whatever it is. Without the class code, imagine there's 100 frogs waiting to go into the kiln, and it's much easier for yours to get lost or disorganized if you don't have your class code. So please, please, please put that on. And then set them down, and I'm just kind of going for finishing touches. It's really hard to get close to those eyes, so I just do the best I can. I don't want to smush what I've already done, okay? As far as the bug or the butterfly, I was playing around with that a little bit, and the tricky thing is making something that's tiny enough to fit that won't break. So we'll experiment with this, and if you think you get one that you like, that's wonderful. If it becomes too tricky, don't be frustrated. We can make one out of either paper or some other material and just glue it on. I'm gonna roll a ball, flatten it just a little bit, and then I just tried to use my pin tool, which will use like a cutter, to cut the wings of the butterfly. And it is tricky, I'm not gonna admit. It is tricky to try to work with something this little. So it start off like an X, and then I can sort of just pinch so that it sort of looks like wings. It's not gonna be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect, but it will be beautiful when it's glazed, okay? If you get one you like, then we need to score the tongue. Again, support it. Put your hand on there and support it so that things don't crush and break. Score gently the back of the bug. You could do a ladybug, maybe just like an oval or something like that with some spots on the back. Teeny little bit of slip, but make sure you have some. Scoring faces scoring, and you kind of press this on gently so it doesn't smash. And then if you want to, you can take a tool and kind of carve the middle of the body there, okay? We can't put the little antennas on with clay because they'll be way too skinny and they will break, but we could build a little butterfly or a fly, whatever this is, a ladybug, something very, very tiny. And if you like that, cool. And if you are having a hard time with it, you can ask me, you can ask a friend, or we could make something when this dries and just glue it on. So don't be frustrated, just have fun with it. I think I'm just gonna try to make a little line on my tongue, really gently, I hope. It's a little bit tricky. Make sure everything's smooth, and then you're ready to turn it in. This will need to dry in the cabinet that I have in the storage closet. And clay takes about 2 weeks to be safe, to let all the water evaporate. Right now the clay is really wet, but what happens is when it sits out to the air, the water starts evaporating. In other words, we don't see it, but the particles are leaving the clay until the clay is what's called bone dry. So it'll be hard, it'll change color a little bit, and at that point the pinch pot frog will be ready to go in the kiln. And the kiln, of course, is the oven that cooks the clay and makes it permanent. Gets up to about 2,000 degrees. And then this year we're gonna try to put some glaze on here. And glaze is that shiny stuff that has glass particles in it. It makes your piece super beautiful. So I hope you've enjoyed your frog. I can't wait to see yours, and that you enjoyed this lesson in hand building a pinch pot clay.